I loved to play outside. And I was a tomboy because I had my cousin Jim, the year older, and then across the alley, Junior and Jimmy Marshall, who were 2 years and 1 year older than myself. And we played pom-pom pull away and kind of really physical games. Now there was a little girl that lived next to the Marshalls, Diane Woods, and I thought she was kind of a sissy, but I played with her after I got older. Sister Regina Francis. I had her for 7th grade, and then just before we were to start school again in September, you could go over to the school. Oh, I can smell it. I can smell the building, the paste, and just talking about it. But you could go in and look on a list and see who your teacher was going to be the next year. And I saw that Sister Regina Francis had been moved to 8th grade, and I was going to have her again. And I was just devastated. She was just, for one thing, she had false teeth that fit very badly, and she used to do some kind of a movement with her mouth and lips that would be to kind of catch her teeth so they didn't fall out. Well, I had started doing that move after 7th grade. I figured by the time I had another year with her, it was going to be a permanent tick. Oh my goodness. And she didn't talk much. She did a lot with hand signals. Like when we were supposed to make our way to the wardrobe, which in some circles would be called a closet, to get our coats, she would go. That meant row 1 was row 2, was row 3. Oh, it was awful. The only good thing I remember about her was that every day at 11 o'clock, from 11 o'clock to 11:20, she read to us from a library book. She read aloud. Oh, and we looked so forward to that. I was not a very happy teenager. Oh, I did not get along at home. I was very rebellious. I stood up to my dad. And it's funny how that works out, because everyone resents the person who stands up to the bad guy, because they think they want it to be peaceful. But they really assign someone to stand up to the bad guy, and maybe they don't even know it. But then they're mad that you do it. 1954 and 55, I was a 9th grader. That was high school at St. Martin's. My best friend was Gay Byerly, and she had a twin named Buzz, whose real name was Philip, and their family owned the Bridge Store, which was on Ashland and Cordy, which was over the canal. The bridge was over the canal, which separated Detroit from Grosse Pointe Park. And I spent a lot of time at the Bridge Store. I helped in the store, selling bait, minnows, prepackaged worms, and penny candy.
How much did you make? Do you remember?
I didn't make money.
It was just...
We, even now it's shocking to say it, we earned boat time. We could, if we worked in the store long enough, we could take a dinghy out
On the canal.
on the canal system and on the river. And I wasn't allowed.
Past the canal.
I wasn't allowed on the water, period. And my parents, why they elected to live in a community where everyone else lived there because of the water. But we weren't allowed on it or near it, frozen or melted or whatever. And I just lived for being on that water.
So would you do it anyway?
I did. I should say that I made a decision that this was going to be the area where I disobeyed my parents.
So you were 9th grade at that point?
Yes, I was in the 9th grade, and I spent the next 4 years on the river. On Peach Island, which is an island that was between Windsor and Detroit, or our side of the river. Actually, it was between Lakewood Park and Windsor. And
so you would go there with Gabe Byerly?
And our group of friends.
In a dinghy? It wasn't motor?
With a motor.
Motor, yeah.
My first crush, Tom Armstrong. Oh my goodness,
What'd you like about him?
Oh. I was in the 9th grade and he was, well, a junior the first year that I knew him. And he was really smart. He went to Cass Tech. He was in aeronautical engineering and was really smart. But it didn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter who they were or anything about them, whether they were good kids or bad kids, or I couldn't be friends with them.
You weren't allowed to have a boyfriend?
I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, but I wasn't allowed to be around boys, period.
Romantic or otherwise?
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that at least half the population was male didn't enter into it. And of course, my friend Gay, her twin was part of this group. They were wonderful kids.
What a sort of funny way of looking.
It's amazing how I really did follow their rules. I mean, I did spend time with these kids, but oh my goodness, I had such a crush on Tom Armstrong that, I became mute.
When you were around him?
Yes. And they were so sweet to us, these boys. They were older, and they seemed to take that responsibility really seriously. And they were just very good to us. I don't know what else to say about it. My parents were really wrong. I remember walking home from skating where I was quite sure that frostbite had set in, and that when I took I had thought when I took my skate off that my foot would just break off, and I would still walk home from the bridge store, which was a mile and a half maybe, and I would be so cold, and Tom or one of these fellows that we knew would say, "Can I give you a lift?" And I'd say, "Sorry, I'm not allowed in cars." And they'd say things like, "Well, finding you frozen in a snowbank is better." I'd say, I guess so.
I guess that's the way.
I had a place that was, that I called the Bird Sanctuary. And it was down on the Detroit River between Marine Hospital and Lakewood Park. And there was a fence which I would climb over. And I never saw another person there. And I would just stay there for hours on end.
Neat.
It was a good place.
And you would just go and think and be alone. And
Yes, I really, I never showed it to anyone, which is kind of amazing. But I spent a lot of time there. Rock and roll Elvis was coming into his own. We loved Elvis. And my favorite song was Earth Angel, which was a doo-wop song recorded by the Penguins in about 56. But yeah, I used to play that song really loudly. I'd sit in the sunroom at our house where there were lots of windows and it was all screened in, and I could play that song for the whole neighborhood. Joey was in a play at Guyton School, and Ronnie, as a 2-year-old, Ronnie and I went to the play, and he was very happy to see his cousin Joe, who was kind of the narrator. But we disrupted the play because Ron, the 2-year-old, kept talking to Joe, who was on stage, who kept laughing. And finally we had to leave so they could start the play over.